What's up, my fellow racers? It's your favorite racing Reaper Shini, and I'm back with another video. Except this time, I'm responding to what some of you have been asking for, where you actually want to see me tune a car for myself so you guys can see how I work out my methods, how I do my testing, etc. Alright, before those of you who never asked for this video leave and never come back, you might want to stick around because there are some things I'm going to mention here that I haven't mentioned before. There's certain things that I learned after the tuning tutorial videos, and I'm going to be discussing those things today. And also there will be chapters in the video. So for those of you who want to see something more specific, you guys can go right ahead and skip through. Now let's talk car choice. You're going to see on screen, I'm going to be using the 1998 Mercedes-Benz AMG CLK GTR. That's a long name. The car seems really good as well. So there's nothing else left for me to say besides, let's do this. Alrighty, so let's begin. Step one for me, as always, is testing the car out. Anyway, here goes. I'm at Hotel Castillo, my player home. Up the road there to the left you can see the Hilltop Descent street race, so that's where I actually test the car. I don't go into the street race, I just run it in free roam. Coming up is a 90-degree right-hander, and what I look for is how much grip the car has on exit. That seems to be pretty good. And then I head down towards the speed trap that's coming up. Alrighty, and 261.77. In the spreadsheet it might say something else. That's just because I did an initial test beforehand.
Right, and there's another 90-degree right-hander there that comes into a sort of upswing swoop on the road. It's good to handle how the car exits. That's a bit of an understeer test going through those corners. Coming up is a 90-degree left-hander, and it's the exact same thing I'm looking for. I'm always checking how the car exits the corner. That will help me judge how I need to set the differential up later.
If I see a lot of tail sliding, then I'll know, okay, there's too much lock. And then if I see a little bit less, then I'll feel it's a bit better where the differential is currently at, and it won't take that much tuning. Now in the speed zone, over here we're just looking to see what is the average speed through a sort of high speed section. 247.53. You might see something else in my spreadsheet that's going to pop up. That's just because I did an initial test. This is another high speed understeer test. What I'm looking for through there is to see whether the car understeers and veers off into the grass on the right hand side. Coming up after this corner, right there where I hit the brakes, that's where I perform my brake test. So from that corner on the road up until this 50 kilometers per hour road sign, if I can stop the car before that, I'm happy. If the car stops anywhere after that, I'm concerned. If it goes into the drift zone up ahead, then that will tell me that the car's braking performance is really bad and I really need to figure it out quickly. So far this car looks good all round. As I said earlier, I don't even know which introduction I'm going to use anymore, so I might have not set in, but the top speed of this car is not the best. It's 330 kilometers an hour for S1. That's not enough. Alright, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to make up for it with the car's grip and with its braking performance, where I can outbrake my opponents and turn better than them. Alright, now the sprung weight is all about controlling how the body of the car shifts its weight around. When I say the body of the car, I'm referring to everything that you see here except the wheels and anything that's connected to the wheels and below that. Alright, so the sprung weight would be everything above the suspension springs, so to speak. Alright, and this part of the tuning segment is all about controlling that. It's all about getting it to shift its weight perfectly so that you can maximize the grip from the car based on how it's pushing its weight down when it's going around corners, when you're accelerating, when you're braking, etc. Right, first thing, as per my tutorial, I like to set the ride height. This is already at its lowest, 8 centimeters. But what I wanted to speak about quickly is, all along I've been saying follow what the basic settings of the game are telling you. So if you see in the spring stiffness, 93.4 kilograms of force per millimeter on the front, that's the spring stiffness for the front springs, all right? And then you see the rear, 142.7. now I've been saying previously that if you are making an adjustment of plus 10 on the front, it is generally recommended to make the adjustment of plus 10 on the rear. Now what I learned afterwards, after the tutorial series, is that you don't always need to do this. You should actually start to create like an offset to add grip or add a certain amount of weight shifting to like imbalance it, which in turn would actually balance things out as you're driving the car along. Because remember, while you're driving the car, everything is moving around, everything is changing, it's dynamic all the time. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this car, I actually want to have the back sitting slightly higher, so I'm going to raise it by 1 centimeter, and I'm going to leave the spring stiffness for now because I'm now going to run my test. For those of you who've been watching the tutorial series, you would know what this test is. I'm starting off at the festival drag strip, and I run all the way down, quite far down this road, where there's a certain hill that I climb up, and I want to see how the suspension compresses and whether it's like actually bottoming out or whether it's compressing just enough to be considered good performance in terms of suspension performance. Okay, so I'm going to run this test. I'll probably fast forward to the point where it's actually for you to see and for you to learn something from, and I'll see you there. Right, approaching the hill now. It didn't really take that long, so it wouldn't have been much fast forwarding. And there's the hill now. Now you can see that the back compressed more than the front. Now the simple reason for that is because you are accelerating up the hill. All your weight is going to be shifted over your rear wheels. That's why your back suspension is going to be compressing more. And I wanted to sort of figure that out a little bit better, where I can balance the car out nicely back to front. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to raise the rear by 0.5 centimeter more, and I'm going to run that test again. Okay, here we go. I want to see the front and the rear sort of balancing out. Okay, that looked pretty much balanced through there. Right, let's keep going, and I'm going to go down to where the dunes start, and I want to see exactly how balanced the suspension is back to front. Alright, everything looks pretty decent from there. It's compressing the same amount back to front from what I can see. If you see anything different, then I guess that's just because your eyes can see better than mine. I'm having to drive the car and look at telemetry. Okay, I'm rewinding quite a bit because I actually want to go back to the hill, and this is the point where I'm going to make adjustments to the spring stiffness, both the front and the rear. Hopefully it will rewind me enough so that I can climb that hill again. And it didn't. I'll just brake from here. Okay, based on what I've seen, the compression that I'm getting is about 85 to 90%, I would say. So I'm gonna have to stiffen the springs up bit by bit until I see that drop down to about 80%. I don't really want to see anything more than that. I feel like anything more than that, any situation where the car goes over a bump, or you know, you suddenly needing to shift the weight the other way, like braking or turning, and I'll probably be bottoming out. So I'm going to change it so that it doesn't do that. I just need to drive back up this road. I'll probably just fast forward this bit so you don't have to see all of this. Alright, what's life without a little bit of smoke? Let's make our first adjustment to the spring stiffness. 93.4 and 142.7. Both of them, the front and the rear suspension look to have been balanced out in terms of compression, but that doesn't exactly mean that I should apply the same adjustments front to rear, because remember, there's a weight difference between the front and the rear of the car. So what I'm going to do is, I think I should increase the rear by 15 kilograms of force per millimeter, and I'm going to increase the front by 10. Okay, so 15, an increase of 15 on the rear would put me squarely at what is this, 157.7. okay, 157.7. And on the front I said I'm going up by 10, so that would take me up to 103.4. And you know what happens now? Time to test again. So I'll probably just fast forward this bit as well. Alright, approaching the hill again. So far it seems to be compressing about 75% of the way, but going up the hill it's actually not pushing that high. So I can see now that I went too far, so I'm going to drop it. I'll drop the front by 5, so that will probably take me down to 98.4, and I'm just working off the top of my head now. I'll drop this by 5 as well, so that will take me down to 152.7. Right, while I'm right here by the hill, I'm just going to rewind quickly. And let's go again. That looks a bit better now. It's compressing a bit more, but not too much. It's about 80% of the way, I would say. Alright, I'm just going to run the rest of this road until the dunes, just to get a better idea all around. Going around this corner here, you can really see that outside suspension compressing up, and that's about where I would want to see it actually. That's looking good to me. How does it handle that bend? Handles it really nicely. Okay, and I would say that that is it for the suspension tuning in terms of the ride height and the spring stiffness. Next up, as per my tutorial is the exact same way that I do things, which is the damping settings that I'm going to tackle next. Now, quickly before I begin this, for the damping settings, I previously said that there is a relationship that goes on between the bump and the rebound setting, alright? So you always want to work out what is that percentage or that ratio of bump to rebound. Now for this car in its standard form, it's 64% on the front and 62% on the rear. You are allowed to change this in whatever way you want to, and I recommend that you stay between 50 to 75%. Obviously, the stiffer you go or the higher you make that number for the relationship of bump to rebound, the more action you're going to get on your bump damping. So that means that your tires are going to be jumping up into your wheel well, or your arch, or whatever you want to call it, much faster, and it's going to sort of have more action in that way. and obviously that will affect your rebound as well. And your rebound obviously might need to be a little bit more stiffer as well to keep up with that ratio. Alright, so I'm going to leave it as is now at 64% on the front and 62% on the rear. I'm going to run the test and then I'm going to make my adjustments after that. What I'm looking for here is to see how fast the suspension actually moves around, how fast it compresses, how fast it decompresses or stretches out. I should tell you guys that this is live. I know I said that before, but I'm saying it again because you'll hear me getting caught with my words and so on, and that should tell you guys that I'm actually doing this on the fly now. Right, so looking at the suspension telemetry now, this isn't exactly looking fast. I just want to rewind so that I don't do that. This isn't exactly looking as fast as I would like it. This is an S1 car. I want to see that suspension move around a little bit faster than that there. But going back to what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying that you could actually imbalance the car front to rear, and you should actually start to do that. Making the front damping more stiffer than the rear would actually provide more grip at the rear, and it's vice versa, where if you make the rear stiffer than the front, you'd actually provide more grip at the front. And the simple reason for that is because the softer side is the side that actually has room for more action. I know normally I say stiffer means more action, but in terms of how the car dynamics work, and you know, let's think about you going hard on the power and then you slam brakes. Because the front is a little bit softer, it's able to take that force a little bit better and transfer that weight over a little bit better, and provide you with a little bit more grip on your front tires if the car has any understeer issues for corner entry. Those factors are a little bit deeper to get into. I'll get into that in another video probably, so I will probably end up making that tips video, but I'll give you the basics of it now, and you know, I'll let you guys start practicing and messing around with those kind of settings so you can figure things out a little bit better on your own. Alright, so I'm gonna make an adjustment now based on what I'm seeing here. I actually want the front to have a little bit more grip on corner entry, so I'm going to make the rear stiffer and I'm going to make the front a bit softer. Okay, now looking at my spreadsheet and based on what these settings are, alrighty then, for the front I would like to go with a 1.5%. actually let's make it 2.5%. it doesn't really make much of a difference, but it makes a difference on the rear sorry, I'm getting really tongue-tied here, on the bump front setting. Right, so I'm gonna make that change now. So that's 5.9 on the front and 5.9, 3.8 on the rear. Okay, and then I'm going to go with 3.5 on the front, on the rear for rebound, so that would be 8.8, and 5.5 on the rear. Okay, I'm gonna run those settings, do another test and see whether the suspension is giving me enough action, so to speak. Automatically, after you start making adjustments, the car should start to feel more livelier. It should start to feel more reactive to what you're asking it to do. You know, the overall response should just change and start to become more sharper with what you're asking of it. And so far, this feels really smooth to me. But while I say it's feeling smooth, that doesn't mean that it's not responsive. It changes direction. I'm not exactly looking at what speeds I'm going through corners. I'm just checking, I'm making sure I'm in the right gear. You know, I'm following like a whole sequence in my head for what I know about driving this track. And so far everything's looking good. Every time I slam the brakes, the car manages to get some grip on the front and start changing its direction a bit better. Every time I go down on the power, it starts going as it should be. Let's do a bit of a serpentine move here. Hard on the brakes, then I let go of the brakes early and turning. Everything seems to be working as I would like it to work. Alright, damping is generally the easier setting to sort out between the three, and the three being your suspension and your anti-roll bar and your damping settings. And now that damping is done, it's time to move on to the next one, which is the anti-roll bar settings. Alright, for those of you who know the series, the first test and the first place where I make adjustments for anti-roll bars is the big circle outside the stadium. Alright, now this also coming back to what I was talking about earlier, where you should be imbalancing the car back to front to actually create a balance while the car is in motion. It also applies to anti-roll bars. Okay, thinking about this car's weight balance, it has a lot of weight at the back, so I'm actually going to end up going with a much stiffer rear anti-roll bar, and I'm going to go with a softer front anti-roll bar in the end. Why am I going to do that? I want the front to be able to shift as much as the rear can, because with the weight at the rear, it's going to shift quite a bit. So it needs to be balanced out while it's moving, not while it's standing still, if you understand what I'm saying. Now I'm going to do my test. I'm going to see how the weight is shifted over to the one side, compressing the left suspension, and how it is stretching out the right suspension. And I'm going to be needing to do this for the front and the rear, but it's easier to work with one side at a time. You're driving and you're looking at 2-4 telemetry items. Just try and make things a little bit easier for yourself. I do that on my own, and I just look at one thing at a time. Alright, so I'm going to begin with looking at the front left and the front right. I'm going to try and get up to the max speed that this car can go around this corner, where I'm like fully locked in. And that's about here. It doesn't want to go any faster. And you can see that the front left, that's compressing about 75% of the way, and the front right isn't stretching out much past the center point. Okay, it's actually still compressing. Now that's something I don't really want to see. I want to see the front right actually lift slightly, and to see that pink bar go just slightly below that white line that is the center point marker. So I'm going to make my adjustment now. Anti-roll bars front. I'm going to drop this by 5 down to 17. Right, adjustment made. Let's do another test and see what happens now. When it's taking bumps, well, from what I'm seeing, when it's taking bumps, it's actually stretching out enough on the front right. The front left, I don't need to be too worried about that, because that doesn't seem to be bottoming out at all. So I could actually go a little bit softer here, and I'm not going to go soft too much. I'm going to drop it by 2.5, so that will take me down to 14.5. Alright, let's see what that will give me. And that is looking great over there now. It's holding at about center point. It's jumping up on the inside a little bit, but it's also managing to stay down quite a bit more now. And that tells me that it's actually looking better with this setting. But I still want to go a little bit more softer. I really want to see it average out a bit more below that center mark. Okay, So I'm going to do another reduction of 2.5. That will take me down to 12. And I can actually feel that the car has a really nice sharp turn in now. Normally when you increase the stiffness on the front anti-roll bar, you'll see the car have a much sharper turning because it would be shifting its weight over much quicker, because it would have more of a limit to shift its weight over, and the car would just turn after that. You know, everything else is up to the tires. But this is a mid-engine car, and that other idea, that increasing the front anti-roll bar to get better turning, that applies to a front engine car. Okay, so it also depends on the weight distribution of the car. You must remember that all the time when you're doing your builds, and this is looking good to me so far. Okay, now the next thing is obviously the rear anti-roll bar. You can see the rear left is compressing to about 75-80% of the way, and the rear right is actually not looking good at all. That's actually compressing about, what is that, maxing out about 65-60% of the way, but I really don't want to see it go that far up. I want to see it sit more like just above the center line. I don't want to see it go below. I want to see it sit just at the center line. Now, the reason why I want to see it sit just around the center line and not so far below is because the car is in a state of acceleration. It's gonna have its weight shifted over to the rear, so you're gonna see a bit more compression there than you're gonna see on the front. What am I going to do here? Based on what I want to see, I want to stiffen it up a bit more, so that I can see that inside not compress so much. So I'm going to go with an increase of 5. An increase of 5 would take me up to 23.5. I'm not exactly looking at my spreadsheet when I'm doing this, and that's why you hear me counting numbers in my head. Alright, let me get back on the road after I regain control of this car. And that's still not enough, so I would actually like to go more. I'm actually thinking I should just go quite a bit more and probably work my way back down. So I'll go up to 33.5. 0.5. There we go. I forgot that this car had another gear, and that's still not enough. So you know what, let's do another drastic increase up to 43.5. I don't normally work with increases of 10, but this car really doesn't want to get that rear right drop down a bit lower. It's still compressing quite a bit. Actually, as this car is standing right now, what is the speed I'm doing? 275-ish. That's quite a lot. Even for an S1 car going around this bend. I'm sure there must be other cars out there that will at least be able to do 280 around here. But this is actually quite pleasant. So I guess sometimes you can't really solve to make it perfect, but we'll try anyway. 53.5. Let's just go maxed out one time. What's the max here? 63 if I remember correctly. 65. So let's go 63.5 and see what happens. And this is exactly what tuning is about, experimenting all the time. Oh, this feels really planted now. The front really feels like it will pull you into a corner, and the rear is just like stuck there. It actually feels really nice like this. And what if I was to go on the opposite end of the spectrum with a really low one, all the way down to 3.5? Why not? Well, that gave me what I'm actually looking for. Nope, it didn't move. It practically didn't move at all. Now, if I have to really explain why this is happening, there is only one reason that's coming. Well, two reasons that are coming to mind. They both interlinked, and reason number one, again, the car is in a state of acceleration. All the weight is shifted over to the rear, but the weight should ideally be shifted over mostly to the rear left. That is the case here, but I don't want to see as much on the rear right. But then going over to reason number two, this car has a rear wing, and that rear wing is generating downforce. It's pushing that set of rear tires further down into the ground, and if I really have to think about it, that could be the reason why, you know, the suspension isn't exactly not compressing to my liking. But you know what, I actually like that setting of 63.5. Whoops, that happens sometimes. So I'm gonna go back there because it felt really nice, it felt really sharp. 63.5. What is the speed I'm getting around here now? This is another test that I do. I just like to see what is the max speed that I can get around this corner before I move on to test number 2. I actually went faster than 275 earlier, so that tells me I should drop it. How about 53.5? Still not enough. How about 43.5? Little bit of understeer there. How about 38.5? There we go. Alright, so I think I'm going to stick with 38.5. I'm going to move on to test number 2 for anti-roll bars, which is the southern circle. The southern circle, when I say that, I mean at the southern point of the freeway. So at the big circle going around the stadium, you're going to see a lot of compression happening on your outside wheels. In my case, it was my front left and rear left wheels, and that's because it's really high speed. Over here you're going to see more of a balanced situation because this is more medium speed, you know, so this is where you want to start to see everything balance out. You need a stable line and just look at it left to right, and you want to see in terms of balance. What I'm looking for is the right side compressing in relation to how much the left side is stretching out, and that to me looks good for the front. And the right, obviously we're in a state of acceleration, as I mentioned time and time again, so that would mean that there can't be as much stretching out on the inside rear tire in relation to how much compression there is on the outside rear tire. Alright, but you know what, I'm gonna stick with it because, you know, I can't really solve it past where it is now, and that's simply just how the car is working, I'm guessing. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know, the car feels good at the end of the day, so I'm gonna stick to my guns and go with this. Now the north circle, or the smaller circle at the top side of the freeway, this is a really low speed test. So what you're going to see here is a lot of stretching out on your inside tires. In my case, it's the front left and the rear left, and you're going to barely see any compression on your outside tires, and in my case that's the front right and rear right. And there you have it. The outside is barely compressing in relation to what the inside is doing and how much the inside is stretching out. So this to me looks good so far. Alright, and that is it for the sprung weight of the car. Now it's time to move on to the unsprung weight, and that is everything to do with the tires and how the tires are interfacing and making contact with the ground. Let me know in the comment section down below which of the sprung tuning adjustments is your favorite and your least favorite. My favorite is damping. My least favorite is anti-roll bars because it takes so much going around in a circle. Sometimes I get dizzy. Now, my testing for going around Horizon Mexico to tune the alignment and the tire pressures. First I like to do at least 3 laps. I want to heat the tires up nice and proper. I want to see that yellow color going out inside to outside, and yeah, I just want to get the tires nice and warm, because the first thing I like to do is set the tire pressures based on what the temperatures are and how the tires are interfacing with the ground from that little graphic over there. And then after that I like to do the camber and toe adjustments if I need to sort out any other alignment issues with the car. Alright, so I'm gonna bang out at least 3 laps here. I'll just fast forward it on the video, and then you guys can see how the tires are changing as these laps go on. Okay, approaching the end of the third lap now, and you can see that these tires are barely heating up properly. The outsides are completely cold, and it only really heats up if I purposely slide the car out and make the tires do something weird, you know. So what I need to do firstly is I'm gonna have to come down with the camber quite a bit. From what I've seen, I can go down by negative I can go down by 0.8 on the negative camber. Earlier you might have seen me just switch over to the miscellaneous tire screen for a second when going around this corner, and I look for what is the minimum readout over there, and I think over there it was actually 0.6. so I'm going to make a reduction on the rear. The rear is where I saw that readout. I work with the rear first and then the front. So I'm going to drop this by 0.5. Okay, and hopefully that will make those rear tires actually make a bit better contact, especially going around corners. I don't want to see any cold bits when you're going around corners. You want to see the outside tire actually starting to make full contact. Otherwise you're not maximizing the grip that tire can give you. You're only using 66% of the tire's surface as compared to using 100. And there you can see the outer heating up a little bit, but it's not enough on the rear. So I'm gonna check this again, the rear camber on the outside. So that's gonna be the rear right at this hairpin corner coming up. I believe I saw 0.1 as the lowest negative camber readout. So I'm going to take the chance and I'm going to drop it by 0.1. I'm hoping that it doesn't go into positive, because when it goes into positive, that means the tire on the outside is going the wrong way. I'm not going to run the whole track again. I'm just going to run this hairpin again just to make sure it doesn't go into positive. And I didn't see any positive there. And there we go. Everything is looking a little bit better. It's not cold on the outside. Well, the inside can be cold because that's not making so much contact, but you don't want the outside tire through a corner to be cold. That barely stressed the tires through that corner, so I wouldn't expect much through there. But through here, let's have a look. It is taking quite a bit of time for the rear tires to heat up, so I'm actually going to drop the rear tire pressure a little bit, maybe by it's always nice to work with half adjustments, so I'm going to drop it by half a bar, which is 7 clicks. Can see it's slipping a little bit, and I'm actually comfortable with that because I know dropping the rear tire pressure is actually going to make it a little bit more slippery. But the temperatures reacting a bit better. It is increasing faster. Perhaps I should go down by another half bar. Alright, let's see if this can get us, or can get me to where I need these tires to be. Maxed out at 80 over there. Earlier I don't think it went that high. Okay, it went into positive there because I went off the road. I just want to run this whole rear camber test again, just to see if I can go a little bit lower with the negative camber. I want to get a little bit more contact on the rear. I believe I saw 0.2 as the lowest, so I'm going to make that reduction. And now let's just run the test again around the hairpin to make sure I don't go into positive camber. It went into positive for a second, and I'm gonna allow that, but as long as I don't see positive camber for extended periods of time, then that tells me that the tire is actually trying to make more neutral contact. The tire is making more neutral camber and possibly the best contact with the road. Right, so that seems to be the minimum that we can go with the camber. Don't think you can go really lower than that, otherwise you'll definitely be running it into positive camber for extended periods. Now from here, those rear tire pressures are acting up quite a bit more. So I'm going to drop the tire pressure another half bar on the rear. Actually, you know what? At this point, I just realized something I never take into account when I started explaining this, which is the wheel and tire dimensions. And I'll throw that up on screen now for what this build actually has. And I'm actually going to change that because from what I'm seeing, these rear tires are way too big for this car's sort of speed range. So I'm just going to drop the rear 345. Wonder if I can get any extra bits of performance while I'm here.
Nope. Nope. Definitely nope. No again. I wonder. That takes me down by minus 70 knots. If I go here, no. That's 7 again. Oh, you know what? I might as well just keep this. Oh, actually, put that on. Oh no, it doesn't work. Was worth a try. Anyway, back outside.
What I just did now, and you know, if you were to do the same thing, your spring stiffness would actually change slightly. So if you were like me and you're doing a spreadsheet and you go back into your spring stiffness, it won't exactly tie up again. So just keep that in mind. Now, how's these tire temperatures looking? The line I can take with the car is a little bit better. It's because the rear is less sticky. But it hasn't solved the problem of getting the best contact from the rear tires. And we're at about maximum negative camber, as low as negative as we can be. But looking at the temperature difference after that last corner, the difference is about 5 and then 10 between inner to middle and then middle to outer. So you know what, I'd say that's good. It's not ideal to not see the tires at race temperatures. Yellow is obviously ideal race temperatures, but you know, what can I do? I'm not pushing the car that hard around this track, I guess. Maybe I'll drop the temperature a little bit more, drop the pressure, I mean. There, a whole bar. It's not exactly heating up the temperatures enough, but the contact point is a lot better this time, so I'm happy with that. Now all right, where was I? Ah yes, front camber and front tire pressures. Okay, now first things first, I'm going to go around this hairpin looking at the miscellaneous screen, looking at the camber on the outside front there, and the lowest I saw was still like -2-ish. So I'm gonna change that down. I'm gonna dial this down by a whole 1 degree. Let's just make sure I don't go into positive here. I'm definitely not going into positive there. And what I want to see now is, does the outside remain cold when going around a corner? It doesn't stay cold, but it's definitely not an even contact patch. You can see the inner and the middle was like 110 and the middle was 100, and the outer part of that front right tire through that corner was about 70s. 78ish, I think it was. There again, the difference was a bit too much when going through the corner, so I'm gonna drop it. I'm gonna drop the camber a little bit more, maybe 0.3. Let's just make sure not going into positive again. Alright, so normally if I was driving a car that had any issues with its cornering performance, like turning or when exiting the corner, I would fiddle with the toe angles to try and adjust the car's turning capacity, or rather capability, and how it exits. But this car doesn't seem to have any issues for me. It just requires some delicate controlling, and it will work out perfectly for me in my case. All right. I'm not going to go over toe angles with you guys. I'm not going to go over caster angles. I actually did some research the other day, and I found out that caster angles actually work with steering wheels. So if you have a force feedback wheel, the caster angle actually translates the effort into the steering wheel either more or less based on what you have it set. If you would have watched my tutorial series where I spoke about caster angles, then you would have seen that I mentioned your caster angle actually dictates how much effort you would need to put into the steering wheel to turn the wheels in real life situations. So in the game, that actually comes across in the game as well. Alright, now that the unsprung weight has been set, so that's the alignment and tire pressures, it's time to move on to the next thing, which is the differential and braking. Alrighty, so time to adjust the differential and brakes. Before I do anything, I'm going to go over to the braking section, and I'm going to adjust the braking balance to be what is the car's weight distribution? 42%. I'm going to shift it to 45%, so that's an extra 5% to the front. Ignore what the UI is saying, it's actually swapped around. I don't know how many times I've said that. Anyway, the braking force, this is a 1.4 ton car with a top speed around 330. I'm going to go ahead and adjust this straight up to 150%. I do have ABS on, so you know I need quite a bit of braking pressure to actually get these cars to stop. But based on my tuning experience and knowledge, that to me is going to start working out fine from the get-go. Alright, I'm going to start off with those adjustments, and I'm going to focus more on the differential. Obviously, if you want to tune your brakes to be 100%, you can follow the whole suspension and how it shifts the weights forward in exact relation between the front and the rear. So as you're braking, as much as you see the front compressing, you want to see the rear lifting. And obviously, the more you see the front compress and the more you see the rear stretch out in terms of how the suspension and the pink bar is moving around, the better it would be for you. So you guys can go ahead and follow that method. I generally, in a quick mode, I just set something based on what my knowledge and my experience would have told me. Okay, so back to the differential tuning now. Now, based on what I know about this track and being an S1 car, going through here, I want to be doing about 140. Getting 150 through there, so that's good. That speed looked good going through that bend. About 130 would have been fine through there, but I was a bit overzealous. That speed looked good through there. This differential settings that's on the car as standard is actually looking very good at the moment. There's the kicker. That high speed corner, I'd actually like to see a lot more speed when going through there. So I'm going to open up the diff ever so slightly. I actually wanted to see like 210, 215 going through that high speed corner. So let's take this down to 23%. That's 5% less. Obviously, I have to run this whole test again run this whole track again to make sure that you know, there's no weird behavior that came from that adjustment. Why do I pick this track for differential adjustments? There's a lot of sharp corners and there's a lot of medium speed corners, and there's one really decently high speed corner. And all these corners would make better use of your differential adjustment rather than aero, if you ask me. Okay, I obviously entered that way too slowly because of the van. That's it, that's what I wanted to see. About 215 is okay for an S1 car going through there. Alright. I don't really have issues with the diff under deceleration. It doesn't seem to understeer when it's braking. It doesn't seem to not want to turn in. Maybe I'll open it up by 5% and I'll do a test quickly. But overall, the differential settings on this car seem to be really good, as the standard settings that it came with just from upgrading it. So I'm just gonna run this last couple laps. It seems a bit weird now. Take it up to 48. Seems I opened it up a bit too much. That behavior looks good to me. When I left off the throttle, then the car turns in a bit more. When I go back on the power, turns in a bit less. That's exactly how I want the car to work. Alright, so I guess I'm done with the differential adjustments. Now I just need to get onto the freeway where I'm going to do the gearing and the aero adjustments. Well, I'm not going to do the aero on the freeway, but I'm going to do that afterwards. Alright, so for gearing, I just like to get into the highest gear that the car has to start off, and I want to see where the car makes its max torque and its max power figures. So I know from the stats I recorded for this car, max torque is 768, max power is 515. So let's see where it makes that, and where's the latest point that it makes that. Okay, so there's some weird ratios going on here already, and I'm gonna need to change that. So firstly, I want to bring this all the way up to 3.5 as a start. Probably going to change it later to fiddle with the top speed again. Next up, I want to lengthen first gear, and then I want to see how it launches. Okay, in second gear, how does it launch? Alright, so it stops wheel spinning at about 70 kph, whether it's in first or second, which is good. Now second gear is shifting now up to, it's shifting at around 6,750. I want that to go more towards 6,000. So I'm going to lengthen this. Let's take it down to 2.7, see where it gets me. Maybe a little bit more. 2.65. There we go. 6,250 is about where I would like it. Or more like 6,300 I saw. And then from here, somebody commented about the arc shape that you should generally see with your gear ratio lines and so on. And that's where I would do this. I would create that arc shape at this point. But like I said, I want to keep the lower gears more towards the torque band and the higher gears more towards the power band. Alright, told you I would change this again. Now I would make the top speed about there, so let's just round it off to 4. Let's just go do another run up the freeway. There we go, that's looking great now. By the time you hit 7th gear, it's at max power already. And 8th gear. And from what I've seen, first through to 4th, you're still catching quite a bit of torque band. It's sitting from the 750 Newton meter range all the way down to the 690 Newton meter range by the time you hit 4th. So these gear ratios are actually looking pretty good. And now it's on to the final thing, which is Aero. And for Aero adjustments, I go to Player Azul. Now, something different again, having to do with the whole balance of the car. I've got the suspension telemetry on screen because Aero actually affects how much your suspension compresses. Right now, all along I've been saying throughout the video, this video specifically, that your front and your rear suspension should be compressed in a more balanced way rather than having it compressing more at the rear while you're under acceleration and more at the front while you're under braking, etc, etc. But Aero does affect it, so I'm going to use that knowledge to my advantage and I'm going to try and adjust it to be more balanced while I've got my foot flat down and I'm in a state of acceleration. Alright, so let's see if we can get that right. And obviously I'm gonna try to get the Aero to assist with cornering, but that will be the main focus. The secondary focus will be to try and get it to balance out the compression while you're accelerating. Alright, so straight off the bat, after not even a full lap, I can see that the front actually needs to have a bit more aero. The rear was obviously increasing more because you're accelerating, so I'm going to increase the front maybe by another maybe by another 25 kilograms of force, but I'm going to round it off. I'm just going to go up to 180. Right, 157 to 180, that's about 23. that is 23. I'm just gonna round it off to 180. Now let's see how it changes things. Okay, obviously the rear feels a little bit out of shape, but before I adjust the rear, how's the suspension compression been changed? Oops, going off the road here. Okay, that's looking to be a little bit more balanced, but now if I need to increase the rear, it's gonna upset the front in terms of the compression again. So I'm gonna make changes to both the rear and the front this time. I'm gonna increase the front by another 10, so that will take me up to 190, and I'm going to increase the rear by 15. What was it? 295 on the dot, so another 15 will be 310. There's a lot more downforce that the rear can generate. As you saw there, an adjustment of 15 barely moved that slider. The car is feeling really balanced now. I could actually increase the rear slightly more. Yeah, I'm gonna increase it just a little bit more, maybe by another 10. Oh, all right, and I guess that is it for the aero adjustment. Now, how do you know whether a tune has actually made a difference? Okay, so only way that I do this is I go and I run that initial test all over again, except this time I've got all the tuning adjustments that I've made to the car. And obviously you want to see some improvement. It's not always going to happen that you see some improvement with the car though, but at the very least you want to see the same result, you know, then you know you wouldn't have worsened the car. So I'm just going to run these tests again. .86. I'll put up the difference in speed on screen as I did it. Car feels much more stable through all these corners. I remember the last time I couldn't go through here past 170. I had to slow down for the traffic there. Can brake a lot later and a lot sharper. Little bit of oversteer action there, but nothing too crazy. to 64.54. I'll put the speed up on screen as I did it there, but I'm pretty sure both the speed zone and the speed trap are major improvements. No understeer going through there, and coming up is the braking test as you pass the corner, and look at that. I'll put up a picture comparison on screen to show you the difference between where I stopped now and where I stopped previously. But overall, I would say that this car was actually a huge success with how it's been tuned. I wouldn't exactly like the top speed that the car has. I mean, 320 plus minus isn't ideal for an S1 car, but you know, having Aero components, like I always say, is a massive downside for top speed, so it has to balance itself out somewhere. And because Forza works with PI, you know, we've got to try and work within those PI ranges. But that's it for this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm actually going to go and use this car online straight away, and I'll make a video about that as well, so you guys can look forward to that. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Reap out.